Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to objectively trace 900 years of incredibly dense, entirely transformative history. We'll be tracking how a movement born in a completely secluded desert cave somehow grew to become a sprawling global civilization. The source material we're looking at today details a staggering journey. We are going from the harsh, tribal sands of 6th century Arabia all the way to the magnificent imperial capital of Istanbul in 1453. Now, what's literally mind-blowing here is the speed of this transformation. According to the source, the Islamic State surpassed the geographic reach of the great Roman Empire in just 100 years. We are talking about arguably the fastest transformation in human history, scaling from a single, marginalized individual to a civilization that ruled across 3 separate continents. Okay, here's our chronological roadmap for today. Dawn in the desert, migration and early statehood, the 4 caliphs, the Umayyad expansion, the Abbasid Golden Age, and finally, the rise of the Ottomans. Let's dive right in.
Section 1, Dawn in the Desert, the 6th century origins.
Picture this, a dark, highly fractured 6th century Arabia, essentially surrounded by exhausted, warring empires like the Sasanians and the Byzantines. Our source notes a highly dramatic historical origin story right here. It kicks off around 570 CE with a failed assault on Mecca's sacred Kaaba by a massive army using actual war elephants. Right after this Year of the Elephant, an orphan named Muhammad was born. Growing up in this harsh society, he earned a unique reputation for extreme trustworthiness. Then, at age 40, around 610 CE, he reportedly received his first divine revelation from the angel Jibril in a secluded cave on Mount Hira. It was a heavy burden that commanded him to read and to warn his people. Now, you really have to notice the stark contrast between Mecca's deeply entrenched tribal caste system and the new message Muhammad brought. Pre-Islamic Mecca was built on this deep inequality, where the weak and women were frankly crushed by horrific practices. The new call of Islam, however, delivered a very dangerous message to the Meccan elite: absolute equality. It completely rejected tribal superiority and idol worship, declaring that slaves and elites were absolute equals. And as you'd expect, this direct threat to the local economic and social system sparked brutal, widespread persecution against the early Muslims.
Moving on to Section 2, Migration and Early Statehood, the shift to Medina. To survive this intense oppression and a really punishing 3-year economic boycott in Mecca, the early Muslims made a strategic exit, known as the Hijra in 622 CE. But, and this is crucial, this wasn't just a retreat, it was literally the foundation of a brand new state. Upon arriving in the city of Medina, they built the first mosque, and local Muslims physically shared their homes and wealth with the refugees. The Prophet then drafted the Medina Charter. This was essentially one of history's first written constitutions, formally uniting Muslims, Jews, and pagans under a shared agreement for mutual defense and religious respect.
During their early struggle for survival, the sheer scale of their disadvantages was staggering. To put it into perspective, at the Battle of Badr, you've got an outnumbered, unified force of exactly 313 Muslims staring down 1,000 heavily armed Meccans. Despite those completely terrifying odds, they secured a highly improbable victory. It fundamentally shifted the region's power balance and proved to everyone that they couldn't just be easily destroyed. Fast forward a bit, following strategic treaties and some brilliant defense tactics, like literally digging a massive trench to survive a siege by 10,000 enemies, the tide turned. By 630 CE, the Prophet returned to Mecca, this time with an army of 10,000. But instead of the expected massacre, he achieved a surprisingly bloodless conquest through mass forgiveness. He destroyed the idols in the Kaaba, sure, but he granted total amnesty to his former persecutors. This cemented the foundations of a unified Arabia before his death just 2 years later. Which brings us to Section 3, the 4 caliphs, rapid expansion and internal friction. Following the Prophet's passing in 632 CE, the next 29 years were, well, incredibly complex. Abu Bakr held the fractured state together and compiled the Quran. Then Umar oversaw massive global expansion, famously entering Jerusalem on foot out of sheer humility. Uthman built a naval fleet and standardized the Quranic text globally, though his appointment of relatives caused unrest that tragically led to his assassination. Finally, Ali, widely known for his deep knowledge, faced the heavy burden of the first major Islamic civil wars. It was an era distinctly defined by pure administrative justice on one hand, and the human ambitions that inevitably led to political fractures on the other. The troop disparities the Islamic armies faced during this rapid expansion, honestly, they were massive. Look at the Yarmouk River. You have 40,000 Muslim soldiers pitted against 200,000 professional Byzantine troops. Utilizing a true tactical genius of dividing his army and actually using a blinding sandstorm to his advantage, the Muslim commander collapsed this centuries-old Byzantine superpower. And soon after, the Persian Empire fell as well.
All right, Section 4, the Umayyad expansion, from state to dynasty.
Following the assassination of Ali, the leadership structure completely transformed into a hereditary dynasty. And the Umayyads were kind of this fascinating paradox. On the one hand, they achieved staggering military reach, conquering Spain in 711 CE and expanding all the way to the gates of India. But internally, they faced severe crises. The horrific tragedy of Karbala, where the Prophet's grandson was martyred, permanently deepened the political and theological Sunni-Shia split. Furthermore, their Mawali policy, which basically treated non-Arab Muslims as second-class citizens, was a really sharp departure from Islam's core of universal equality. Despite a brief, celebrated return to justice under Umar ibn Abdulaziz, this ethnic discrimination absolutely planted the seeds of the Umayyads' eventual downfall.
Section 5, the Abbasid Golden Age, swords to science.
So, the Umayyads are overthrown, and the capital shifts once again, this time to Baghdad under the Abbasids. And they swapped a strict focus on military conquest for an intense laser-like dedication to global knowledge. They established the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and it literally became the intellectual center of the world. Muslim scholars translated ancient Greek, Indian, and Persian texts, but they didn't just copy them, they expanded on them. They mapped stars, invented algebra, and wrote medical canons that Europe would rely on for the next 600 years. They sparked scientific revolutions centuries before the European Renaissance even began. But according to historical accounts, this vibrant, centuries-long golden age was brutally interrupted. In 1258, Mongol invaders sacked Baghdad. They massacred the population and totally destroyed the magnificent libraries. The source notes that so many invaluable books were thrown into the Tigris River that the water reportedly flowed black with ink. Politically, the Abbasid era was just wiped out.
Finally, we arrive at Section 6, Rise of the Ottomans, passing the banner to the Turks.
From the ashes of those Mongol invasions, a completely new power rose from Anatolia to resurrect the vast geographic reach of the Islamic Empire. Starting as just a small state in 1299, the Ottomans systematically integrated the Balkans, remarkably doing so through religious tolerance and low taxes, which really won over the local peasants. This culminated in 1453 when, get this, a 21-year-old Sultan, Mehmet the Conqueror, achieved the seemingly impossible by taking Constantinople, renaming it Istanbul. By 1517, the official title of the Caliphate passed to the Ottoman sultans, integrating millions from Europe to North Africa under one unified global system of law and trade. So, as we wrap up this explainer, just step back and look at this stark historical transformation. What started with one man in a silent desert cave evolved through unimaginable triumphs, devastating civil wars, golden ages of science, and imperial expansions to become a system stretching across the known world. Ask yourself, how are the ripples of these specific 900 years, the borders that were drawn, the cultures that merged, and the knowledge that was preserved, still defining the global dynamics we navigate today? Thank you so much for joining me, and keep questioning the history that built our world.